Maine-based Islandport Press is a dynamic, award-winning book publisher. Islandport strives to capture and explore the grit, heart, beauty, and infectious spirit of the region by telling tales, real and imagined, that can be appreciated in many forms by dreamers, readers, and adventurers everywhere. Islandport Press. We tell stories. Visit us at www.islandportpress.com.
She's from the land of snowmobiles and evergreens, where some will dig a hole to cook a pot of beans. Certified to be a guide, moose will come from far and wide when they hear her call. But most of all, she's my dog.
Glad to hear it. My name's LeClair, and welcome to The View from Here. To the friends in the studio audience, thanks for dropping by for a visit. And to you folks at home, I'm so glad you tuned in. God, you wouldn't believe what happened this last weekend. See, I have a little dog, Scamp. He's a Bichon Poodle mix, 14 pounds of trouble, cute as a button, and stubborn as all get out. But God, I love that little guy. See, my husband and I usually trade off dog walking duties. He takes Scamp out in the morning, I do the afternoon shift. But we were both home last week, and I thought it would be fun if we walk around the block together. Simple enough, but let me tell you, it was a real eye-opener. So we walk for a bit, we're chatting like you do, when Scamp stops to do his business, and like dog owners everywhere, yeah? We stop and watch. When it looks like he's finished, I get out a plastic bag, trying to be a good citizen. I go to pick it up, and Charlie says, "Don't bother." What? Not big enough to bother with. Well, that kind of brought me up short. Are you saying there's a minimum size for scooping poop? Yeah, more or less. Well, I bag Scamp's deposit anyway. We continue walking. So let me get this straight. You have some sort of system for determining whether a poop's big enough to pick up or not. Yeah? Do you bring a ruler with you on your walk? Some kind of gauge things, like for measuring lobsters, you whip it out and you go, "Yep, that's a keeper." No, I don't bring a ruler. Then how do you know? I just know. We continue walking in silence while I ponder this information, but I wasn't buying it. Say on your morning walk, when Scamp sometimes does his business twice, do you use 2 bags or go in for the double scoop? Now, personally, I go for the double scoop. I know that's an advanced maneuver, but see, I've been a cashier down to the A&P since high school, and I have advanced skills. It's all in the wrist. 1 bag after the first poop, tie it up, call it a day. What if he does his business a second time? Second time's just an afterthought, not big enough to bother with. So you just leave it? Yeah, but I take a stick and kind of disperse it. Disperse it? Blend it in with its surroundings. So you bring a stick with you on your walk? No, I find a stick. Charlie, I says, reasoning with him, wouldn't it take less time to just pick up that second poop? Well, maybe. But see, I left the bag back at the first spot to retrieve on my way home. That's when you reach for a second bag. Don't need a second bag, Ida. Not big enough to bother with. After 40 years of marriage, you think you know someone. Then something like this happens, and you find yourself thinking, who is this guy? Oh, there's the doorbell. Must be time for my special guest. A moose doesn't have to work, unless you count foraging for food and procreating. Seriously, how can I get a job like that? No, a moose does what a moose does best.
Island Port Press works to keep alive the tall tales and stories that reflect the unique culture of northern New England. Island Port Press, we tell stories.
Hi there. My guest today is the wicked talented musician and storyteller, Jennifer Armstrong. Come on out here, Jennifer.
Hey!
Yay! Oh, thanks for coming.
Oh,
Come
glad
sit
to
down.
be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. I made some ginger snaps. This is from my friend Lori Graves, and she has the blog Notes from the Hinterland, and these are her Aunt Rochelle's ginger snaps. Don't they smell good?
They smell great.
I ate 3 when they were hot. Don't tell anybody.
I won't say a word.
And they are crispy. So, Jennifer, there's so much I want to talk to you about. I don't even know where to begin. So I was looking at your website, because I've known you quite a long time, and we performed together. You've been MCs at some storytelling events. I saw a picture of your mom and dad, which I've heard you talk about, but I've never seen, with Studs Terkel. Now, what is the
Okay.
scoop with that?
Well, here's the scoop.
Okay.
My parents met on WFMT radio, which is the program that Studs Terkel, the station Studs Terkel had his program on. And the story goes that they were both asked up to the station to play music on the midnight special. And my mother tells the story that there was this fabulous piper who dressed up in kilt, sporin jacket for a radio show.
That's a dedicated Scotsman.
It's very dedicated, and she thought he was someone she needed to meet. So she went and introduced herself, and they danced the Gay Gordons up and down the halls there at FMT, and their first date was to go Scottish country dancing.
Oh, how wonderful.
So there it was.
A match made in heaven,
I think
introduced
so.
by Studs Terkel.
Exactly.
Wow. Now, you grew up playing music, right? How many instruments do you play?
Well, I play, what do I play? I play the bagpipe.
Yeah.
I play the banjo, the guitar, fiddle, the lap dulcimer, the bowed psaltery. I have a
I don't even know what
boron.
that is.
I didn't bring that one.
I know.
And harp. I have a Celtic harp.
Oh, wow.
How many was that? I lost track.
Yeah, and you started playing really young, right?
Well, the instruments that we had in the house growing up, my mother played guitar and dulcimer, lap dulcimer, and she had an auto harp, and my father played the bagpipe. So he wanted to learn to play fiddle and decided it was too hard. So my sister and I learned to play fiddle. And then when I was 12, I took banjo lessons at the Old Town School of Folk Music with a whole group of folks.
Is this in Chicago?
This is in Chicago.
Yeah.
It was on West Armitage Street at the time. And that was great. That was great. It was always this big group of people, and we'd gather in Brunsey Hall for all the different classes would gather and all play, out of the same tune book. And the song I always think of, and I don't know why, is this song that goes, "We come on the sloop John B, my grandfather and me," because there was a particular little strum that Ray Tate taught every guitar student that went through the Old Town School, and it was perfect on, "We come on the sloop John B, like that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Anyway,
And
it was-
how young were you when you started playing your first instrument?
I was probably, my parents, for their honeymoon, bicycled around Europe with a half-size guitar. So I started playing the half-size guitar when I was 5.
Wow.
And the lap dulcimer, we tried, and the auto harp when we were little, like that. The fiddle I started when I was 8. As I say, banjo 12, bagpipes when I was 13.
Wow.
Because you see, I was born the night the Black Watch Bagpipe Band played in Chicago, and my father had to leave the concert to take my mother to the hospital.
Ah.
And 13 years later to the day, the Black Watch Bagpipe Band was playing in Chicago. And so my father took me to the concert and gave me a practice chanter. It's a small instrument that you learn to play on, figuring that it was my fate to learn to play. And And I've always wondered about this, and you might have some insights. That night at the Black Watch Bagpipe concert, when I was 13, our car was stolen.
Wow.
What does that mean about my bagpipe career? I've always wondered.
Yeah, wow. Well, if you dance, you have to pay the piper, I guess.
I guess so.
So, did you learn to play the bagpipe to be close to your dad?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so, because he always talked about, well, the Armstrongs were a border clan. They were from the Cheviot Hills between England and Scotland.
And you have an Armstrong
And I do.
tartan
I have
on
Armstrong tartan.
Yeah.
And my father's father had come over from York, England, to the United States when he was 18, and didn't really have much interest in the Scottish history, which my father loved.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he thought if he learned to play the bagpipe, somehow it would foster this connection not only to his father, but to the home country.
Yeah.
And his parents just hoped he'd outgrow it. You know, they just really
Bagpipes have
did.
a bad reputation, don't they?
They do. But since I sort of knew that whole story,
Yeah.
and there's this unspoken expectation in a musical family that you are going to carry on, and certainly the bagpipe being from Scotland, there's sort of even more of this hereditary
Yeah.
storyline
Yeah.
that you're wanting to, and it's all these traditions that he had with the bagpipe of playing Old Lang Syne at FMT radio station on New Year's Eve at midnight, of piping up the sun at the lakefront on Lake Michigan for the summer solstice on June 21st, of opening up the University of Chicago Folk Festival every January with the bagpipe. So I remember when, after my father had passed away, and this person called me, who my dad used to play at this big bonfire that they had in the fall. And I called my sister and I said, "Oh, Rebecca, I kind of feel like I have to say yes because it's the tradition. Our father always played at that bonfire." And she said, "Don't do it. He hated that gig. He didn't know how to get out of it. Don't continue it." So I was off the hook on that one.
Yeah, but I love this sense of carrying on tradition. And I heard you tell a story once, and it still affects me. And I would love for you to tell that story right now about piping for your dad. Can you tell me that?
I can.
I'm starting to tear up
And
already.
it was an important time to carry on the tradition, and I was really glad I could. My father, as I mentioned, opened the University of Chicago Folk Festival every year in Mandel Hall. And he got Alzheimer's. And in the early stages,
hard, right?
it's a hard one.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "You know, when the bagpipes go, that's it." That's what? That's it. So the University of Chicago Folk Festival came along, and he said he wanted to pipe. So my mother and I both, banded together to make this happen, right? He could play only one song. He was down to one song that he could remember. And he didn't remember how to put the kilt on. My mother had to buckle him in. And then the bagpipe wasn't working well. I had to fuss with all the reeds, and we felt like we were, we propped him up.
Propping him up.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and we wanted him just to come out from the wings. But no, he always marched in from the back of the hall, so that's what he was doing. Okay, so he starts down the aisle, he starts up the stairs, and he trips. And I think what was so gripping for everybody in that hall is that he cried out like a child would cry out when he fell, like, "Oh!" And my mother and I, we were both there, and we both rushed to him, and of course, appropriately enough, she grabbed him and I grabbed the bagpipe, right? And I said, what do you want to do? He says, "I have to finish. I have to finish." So I handed him back the bagpipe, and he walked up on stage piping, and thunderous applause. to finish out the tune. But I knew he couldn't do it again. That was all any of us could get through. So the next year, I dressed in my father's vest and Armstrong tartan skirt and went down to open up the festival.
Oh.
And my mother brought my father down to be in the audience. And, you know, I'm all proud, right? And I'm all dressed, and I'm with my bagpipe, and I say to my father, "How do I look?" And he says, "You're wearing my socks." Well, my mother had given me a pair of Armstrong tartan socks for the occasion. I said, "Mother just gave me these socks." "Those are my socks," he says. So we go to my mother, and I say, the socks?" She says, "Oh, George, I washed them and they shrunk, so I gave them to Jennifer. I didn't think you'd mind." And I say to my dad, "Well, talk about following in your footsteps.
Oh,
I'm wearing your socks."
you're
And we
killing me.
both just burst into laughter. It was so fabulous to have that.
That is a beautiful story, and you made me get teary just like you did before. Now we've been talking about it, you're gonna play the bagpipes.
I am.
for
I'm
us,
going to
right?
go play the pipes for you.
Something for your dad and something for your mom.
I will.
I love that.
We'll be right back, and Jennifer's going to dazzle us with the bagpipes and the banjo. Moose eat a combo platter of water plants, leaves, woody plants, and twig tips with a garnish of bark thrown in for good measure. You know what? I think I tried that diet.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure you recognize that second tune, which is Scotland the Brave. Well, the song I'd like to share with you with the banjo is one that I wrote for my mother. My father, who loved bagpipes, also loved songs that he said were dark and hooded. My mother, on the other hand, loved songs with happy endings. And so she called me up one day and said, "Guess what? Death isn't going to be a mystery anymore. I'm going to see what's on the other side." Yippee! That's how I heard she was dying. So it was hard to share that sort of oh boy feeling with my mother. But I decided when we had a big family reunion that summer. And I thought, well, what would it be like if I tried to look at it from her point of view? If I stood in my mother's shoes, if I put on my mother's socks, what would that be like? And I literally stepped out of my own self, my own view, and stood in my mother's view, and this song came to me. The chorus, which we hear in the audience here at the studio, are welcome to sing along on, and whoever's tuned in, you are welcome to sing along. The chorus combines two of my mother's favorite songs, the Shaker hymn Simple Gifts, and Gordon Bach's song, The World is Always Turning Towards the Morning. So here's the chorus. And we'll sing to the rising sun in glory, we'll dance in the dawning of the day, for the world is always turning toward the morning, and we'll come around right, I know, someday. So whatever you can get of that chorus, you're welcome to sing, hum along. She said, my house of worship is the lake shore, my God the Son upon his heavenly throne. His bright and burning hands will cleanse and heal us, the way, the truth, the light will lead us home. And we'll sing to the rising sun in glory, we'll dance in the dawning of the day, for the world is always turning toward the morning. We'll come round right, I know, someday. She said, why make things hard when it's so simple to see the beauty that is all around? Why wrap a cloud of darkness round your vision? Look, light is spreading gold across the ground. And we'll sing the rising sun in glory, we'll dance in the dawning of the day, for the world is always turning toward the morning. We'll come round right, I know, someday. She said to me, death won't end in darkness. The Lord of light is reaching out his hand. The shadows part on either side to guide her. She is walking safely to the promised land. And we'll sing to the rising sun in glory, we'll dance in the dawning of the day, for the world is always turning toward the morning. We'll come round right, I know, someday. Yes, we'll sing to the rising sun in glory, dance in the dawning of the day, for the world is always turning toward the morning. We'll come around right, I know, someday. We'll come around right, I know, someday.
Jennifer, that was beautiful. Look at you. Mwah, mwah. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Ida. Thank you.
Welcome to Ask Ida. This is the section of my show where I answer your questions. Your letters are delivered to Mahoosic Mills by Pony Express, and here she comes now on a trusty steed, Moxie. Oh, hello!
Hey!
Oh, good girl, Moxie, good girl. Thank you very much, kind lady. Bye. Dear Ida, I'm a big worrier. Come from a long line of worriers. Real easy. I can get into a jag where I'm so busy worrying, I'm not really living, which is something I worry about too. Frankly, it's wearing me out, and I'm ready to do something about it. But what? Any suggestions to help me stop worrying? Worrywart in Waterfall. Dear Worrywart, I have a question for you. What were you worrying about 6 months ago? If you're like me, you probably can't remember. Worrying is one of those things that is a complete waste of time, but we do it anyway. My favorite time to worry is in the middle of the night when I wake up to pee, and then I spend a fitful hour or more mulling things over that I can do nothing about at that moment. Let me put on my official certified Maine Life Guide Magic Moose Antlers, and I'll give you a couple of things you can do to get that worry under control. For me, worrying falls into two categories. The big stuff, like world peace and global warming, and everyday things, like whether my nephew Jimmy will get laid off from his job, or that Charlie will be all right driving home in the freezing rain. Both the big and everyday things are out of my control, but somehow I confuse worrying with actually doing something about it. This may sound a little weird, but making a worry appointment really works for me. Say I'm worried about Jimmy getting laid off from his job at the Forestry Service. He counts trees or something like that, just loves it. And he's a heck of a good worker, but last one hired, first one fired, right? So I find myself thinking about Jimmy throughout the week, and my stomach starts churning every time I do. That's a waste of time and energy. I take myself in hand and I say, okay, Ida, you can worry like crazy about Jimmy on Friday from 4:30 to 5:30. That's when he gets out of work and picks up his paycheck. If he gets a pink slip, he'll call his mother, my sister Irene, and she'll call me. Anytime during the week when I find my mind wandering to Jimmy and his job, and I start poking at that worry like a sore tooth, I remind myself, not now. You can worry all you want on Friday. That way, I still feel like I'm doing my part, showing I care by worrying about Jimmy, but keeping it to an hour. That frees up a lot of brain space. Lots of times I'll set a worry appointment, and by the time I get to it, the worry has already passed. So I skip the worrying altogether. Another way to crank your worrying down a notch is to think, what if? What if Jimmy loses his job? We'll deal with it, right? We've all had bad things happen, but somehow we make it through. And we'll continue to roll with whatever comes our way because we always have. It seems what they call counterintuitive, but asking yourself, what if the worst happens, makes you realize that you can handle it. And once you realize that, the knot in your stomach and the clenching around your heart relaxes and the worry lessens. Like the saying goes, worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but never gets you anywhere. If you'd like to ask Ida, just send a letter to PPM TV, 280 Marcy Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 03801. Attention, Ida. Your letters will be delivered to Mahoosic Mills by Pony Express. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for tuning in to The View from Here and spending some of your precious time with us. I appreciate it, I do. And a shout out to our studio audience. It wouldn't have been as much fun without you. Thank you to my friend, the wicked talented Jennifer Armstrong, for dropping by. If you'd like more info on Jennifer, please check out the credits at the end of the show. And tune in next time for more stories about Mahoosic Mills, Maine, a visit with another fabulous guest, and as always, some down-home advice. That's it for now. Catch you on the flip side.
Count on her to tell a tale with humor that'll never fail. Winter right through fall, but most of all, she's Ida.
Maine-based Island Port Press is a dynamic, award-winning book publisher. Island Port strives to capture and explore the grit, heart, beauty, and infectious spirit of the region by telling tales, real and imagined, that can be appreciated in many forms by dreamers, readers, and adventurers everywhere. Island Port Press. We tell stories. Visit us at www.islandportpress.com.